Everyone knows the story. World War I began with a gunshot in Sarajevo. Archduke Franz Ferdinand assassinated, alliances triggered, armies mobilized, and millions dying in muddy trenches. But that famous shot was only the spark. The real explosion came from something far more hidden and far more dangerous: the global financial system that had been quietly primed for decades by Europe's most powerful bankers. Behind the flags and propaganda, the world was balancing on a mountain of debt, colonial competition, and gold-backed currencies that tied every nation's fate to the movement of bullion between London, Paris, Berlin, and New York. By 1914, Europe was a powder keg. Nationalism rising, militaries expanding, but beneath it all was a financial arms race. Britain and France controlled vast colonies, feeding their factories with rubber, cotton, and oil, yet their empires ran on loans from banking dynasties like the Rothschilds and Barings brothers. Germany, a late industrial giant hungry for colonies in Africa and the Middle East, was choking under its own debts while racing to build a navy to challenge Britain. Russia and Austria-Hungary, multi-ethnic empires on life support, borrowed heavily just to stay intact. Merchant banks, not monarchs, were pulling the strings, lending money at interest rates that turned global politics into profitable chaos. Every empire was tied to the gold standard, meaning currencies were backed strictly by gold reserves. One bad harvest, one trade disruption, one rebellion in a colony could drain gold and trigger currency collapses. Britain hoarded 40% of the world's gold, while Germany struggled to keep its vaults full. Colonies weren't trophies, they were lifelines, needed to keep reserves stable. And as tension rose, bankers made a killing. More fear meant more loans meant more interest, and more interest meant more control. When the crisis ignited, it wasn't just armies that mobilized, it was the ledgers. J.P. Morgan Jr., the Wall Street titan, funneled over $3 billion in supplies to Britain and France, including a record-breaking $500 million loan in 1915 that secretly tied America's economy to the Allies long before the U.S. entered the war. Neutrality became a joke. If the Allies fell, Morgan's empire would collapse with them. Meanwhile, Germany desperately borrowed gold from its allies, drained Austria-Hungary's reserves, and printed money until inflation threatened to explode. Behind the trenches and barbed wire, bankers were playing a high-stakes chess game. Britain choking German exports with naval blockades, France financing Russia's armies with bonds backed by colonial taxes, and secret treaties offering land and loans to buy loyalty. Italy was literally bribed into switching sides in 1915. And when America finally entered the war in 1917, it wasn't just for democracy. It was because the U.S. had billions invested in an Allied victory. By war's end, 16 million were dead, empires were shattered, but the financial web survived. The U.S. emerged as the new global creditor. Europe became a continent of debtors. Versailles wasn't a peace treaty, it was a financial trap that crushed Germany under impossible reparations, detonating its economy and paving the way for Hitler's rise. The Sarajevo bullet was just a pretext. The real war was fought in bank vaults, where loans determined alliances, gold determined strategies, and profit determined who lived or died. World War I wasn't just the war to end all wars, it was the birth of modern global finance, a system still echoing today through sanctions, IMF bailouts, currency wars, and geopolitical manipulation. The bankers didn't fire the guns, but their ink drew the borders, fueled the conflict, and shaped the century that followed.